Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
What's up, podcast family? Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 383. I'm Phil Graham. I'm so excited to be with you guys today because I'm going to be teaching you something very cool and something that can be really amazing for a lot of advertisers. And that is how to leverage what I call emotional triggers in your Facebook and Instagram ads. So not everybody realizes this, but emotions really drive most buying decisions. It's usually not logic or facts, but typically it's emotions, making people feel something that can move your audience to actually take action, especially when it comes from an ad. So when you tap into the right emotional triggers for your audience, that could absolutely mean the difference between somebody just scrolling past your ad versus somebody stopping and paying attention and clicking and even eventually buying. So today I'm going to teach you guys how you can leverage the power of emotions and emotional triggers in your Facebook ads so that hopefully people aren't just seeing your ads, but they feel something. And those feelings can make them stop and pay attention and sometimes drive a lot more actual results. One important thing that I want to mention about emotional triggers is that we're not doing this to twist anybody's arm or to trick anybody or mind control them into anything. It's not anything about that at all. What it is, there's tons of content out there, and you need to create ads that actually hook people and get their attention. And they're things that your audience cares about for their own good. So we're not trying to manipulate at all. We're trying to create things that will get their attention so you can help them. And that's really the goal of these emotional triggers in your ads. So before we jump in, if you guys are looking for any one-on-one coaching so you can learn ads the right way, or if you're looking to have somebody run your ads for you so you don't have to worry about it, you can just do what you do best, you can always go to my website for either one of those things, philgrahamdigital.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I would love to connect with you. We can set up a short Zoom call and go from there. Emotional triggers can be really effective because they can help create a real connection between your ads and your ideal audience that are viewing the ads. Because what you're doing when you're doing this is you're tapping into the feelings and emotions of your audience, whether that's happiness, fear, curiosity, maybe it's nostalgia or excitement or inspiration. There's all kinds of different triggers that you can leverage. So when you strategically use this stuff, that can make a big difference. You can do it through your visuals, like your video and your images. I like to do it through ad copy and storytelling. So you can do it a lot of different ways. But when you do this and you do it right, it can sometimes be a lot more effective in influencing the behavior of your audience, whether you want them to click something or buy something. Think about some of the ads you've seen and some of the brands you like. Let's think about like companies like Apple and Nike. When you see ads from those types of brands, is it just numbers and stats, or is it things that make you feel something? It's almost always something that makes you feel something. It evokes some kind of an emotion. But the cool thing is any advertiser can use this. It doesn't matter who you are. You could have a large budget or a small budget and still do this. So it can be really powerful. So I want to talk about some of the most common emotional triggers that we like to use in advertising. And there's, I think, 5 of them. Number 1 is fear of missing out. This is a big one. People do not want to miss out. They don't want to be left out. It creates an urgency and can help drive action from your customers. So that's a big one. Another one that I don't see talked about as much is nostalgia. So if you can tap into positive memories and better times that your audience has had, that can really help you build a connection with them. The third one is curiosity. This is a huge one. We use this all the time. In fact, I love putting questions in headlines because that curiosity makes a great hook, but you're engaging with them by sparking their curiosity. Now, you don't want it to be clickbait. You want it to be real, but that can be a really powerful trigger. Number 4, I would call this like happiness, being able to associate positive feelings with your brand can usually do good things for you as it relates to your ideal audience who's viewing your ads. And then number 5, I would say hope and or inspiration, giving somebody some hope and inspiration that they can be better, their life could be better, or something could be better because of your product or service. Those 5 emotional triggers are pretty amazing. They're super powerful. Those are 5 of my favorite ones. There's a lot more than that, but those 5 are like our bread and butter. And I highly recommend that you guys use these in your ads. So I'm going to give you just a quick example of a couple of these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 5 specific copywriting techniques that you can use in your ads to leverage some of these emotional triggers. So the first example I want to give is fear of missing out. I'm going to use an example ad from Airbnb. Now I'm using a couple big brands here, but again, I want to be very clear. Small advertisers can use this too, even if you have a tiny budget. So don't let this stop you from doing it too, because you could absolutely do it. But Airbnb ran a campaign, and in this campaign, they really emphasized the idea that regular traditional travel doesn't measure up, and it's not as good as the immersive experiences that you can have if you use Airbnb. And in their ads, they actually showed the real homes that you could stay in, and you could have a lot more local experiences. And they really suggested that if you don't choose Airbnb, you can be missing out on truly something cool. And they really tied it up in a perfect little bow with a great tagline, which would also be a great headline. And that was, don't just visit, live like a local, or you'll miss out on the full experience. So that was really effective. And that ad and that campaign is pretty amazing. That's a great example of using fear of missing out. The other example I want to give is for nostalgia. And there's a million different ways you guys could go with this. That's why I don't want to give too many examples, because there's so many different options. I just wanted to kind of give you a little feel for things. For the nostalgia, I'm going to go with Coca-Cola. And one of their most famous campaigns was a Share a Coke campaign. And what they did was they took some of their branding off the actual cans and replaced it or added to it and put people's names on there. And they took some of the most common and popular first names of people. And really what they were doing was encouraging people to share a Coke with friends and loved ones. So with that, it became not just, hey, buy our drink, it's really good, but they evoked emotion for nostalgia and family and friends by essentially going back to an easier, more simple time where you could just share a Coke with somebody. And by putting the name of the people on the can, it just reinforced that even more. So what it did was it tied the act of buying and drinking a Coke with memories of your friends and family, and really trying to get you to make more of those. And that was pretty genius. Now, the cool thing is, like I said, you don't have to be a big brand or spend a lot of money to do this. You don't have to be e-commerce. You could be a service business and figure out how to use all these triggers. I just wanted to share a couple examples so you kind of got a feel for what I was talking about. But what I want to do now is jump into the main part, which is I want to share 5 copywriting techniques that you guys could use to help leverage these emotional triggers in your Facebook ads. And again, there's many different ways you can do this. You can do this with your videos, with your images. Copywriting, in my opinion, is one of the most effective ways to do it. And there's really 2 places to do it: in your ad copy as well as your headline for the ad. And then, of course, a third place to do it would be on your website, on your landing page, sales pages, etc. So I'm going to give you these 5 techniques that I recommend. Number 1 is using power words. So that can evoke emotion. Words can absolutely make a big difference, my friends. And when you use power words, they can be persuasive. They can trigger that emotional response. And so what you want to do is you want to find words that align with whatever emotional trigger or triggers you're trying to evoke. So I've got a couple examples. For FOMO, fear of missing out, some power words that can help that are limited or exclusive or hurry or last chance. Those are just a couple examples for fear of missing out. For nostalgia, you could say remember, you could say classic, timeless, or relive. And obviously you would add to that, but that gets you started with power words that could lead into a story or a sentence that's going to evoke that kind of trigger. For curiosity, you could just use words like discover or unveil or secrets or hidden or ask a question. I ask questions all the time in our ads because that evokes curiosity. Power words in your ads can absolutely help with these emotional triggers. Number 2, I recommend you guys craft headlines that also help tap into those emotions and those triggers. There's many times that somebody will just look at one part of an ad and decide whether they want to actually engage with it or not. Sometimes it's the video or image, other times it's the ad copy, but many times it's the actual headline. This is one of the most valuable pieces of real estate on your ad. A lot of times it's the first thing they see. So you need to hook people with it and you want to evoke, again, those emotional triggers. So for fear of missing out, you could start off by saying, don't miss out on, and then mention what you're talking about. Just something as simple as that. And then you combine that with some emotional triggers in your ad copy for FOMO. That could become really amazing as an ad. For curiosity, I really like uncover the mystery, and then I usually finish it with something else, depending on what I'm talking about. That's a really good one. And then happiness or joy or inspiration, you could say, feel the joy of, and then mention what the result is. Feel the joy of weight loss or feel the joy of something, some kind of benefit that your product or service offers. Or you could replace joy with inspiration. Get inspired with, and then you mention your product or service. So that's an example of doing that through headlines, but do not ignore headlines. That's a great opportunity to start evoking those emotional triggers. Number 3 is storytelling. So you should absolutely be leveraging storytelling in your ads, because when you tell a story in an ad, you can evoke and share and show empathy, happiness, all kinds of different things. Fear of missing out. You can actually combine a bunch of these triggers even into one little story that might not take very long. You could also do this in a video if you're creating a video ad and you're talking in it. But make sure you guys are storytelling in some of your ads and really hook them, because storytelling is one of the best ways to actually reach your audience and get their attention and get them to stop and pay attention. One good example for FOMO is you could share a story about a customer or client that you have who missed an opportunity at first to maybe buy your product or service. They regretted it and then they came back and bought. And maybe they told you how great of a decision it was and they're glad they did it and they're glad they took action now. For curiosity, for example, you could start with something kind of intriguing or mysterious. And you can slowly throughout the story reveal a couple details, and it helps keep the audience engaged. I hope by going through a couple of these examples, you guys see there's like 1,000 different ways you could do this. And I can't give examples for every single one because this would be like an 8-hour episode. So I'm just trying to give you enough that you can use, but also, of course, you need to tailor that to your specific brand and what you're selling. If I was working with you personally, I could help you figure that out. But otherwise, these are the things that I would be focused on, these 5 things. And then you can work in how that applies to your ideal audience. Okay, number 4, you want to create emotionally driven calls to action. So it should be more than just a call to action. It should really resonate on an emotional trigger level to your audience, and that can make a big difference. So for example, for FOMO, you could say, claim your spot before it's gone. So you're combining the call to action with a trigger. Buy now, claim your spot now before it's gone. You see, there's a call to action, but there's also the trigger of the FOMO there. For curiosity, you might want to say, see what you've been missing. Click here to start, something like that. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but I would combine a call to action along with one of these emotional triggers. And last but not least, number 5, I highly recommend you guys also incorporate some social proof that reinforces your emotional triggers. So whether that's through testimonials that you've gotten, screenshots of testimonials, or user-generated content, you could use those, especially when they relate to any specific triggers. So for example, let's say you had a testimonial or user-generated content that specifically was about FOMO, how they almost didn't purchase, they got in right before the deadline, and they're so glad they did because they've gotten a certain result. That would be a great thing to use to help evoke even more of the FOMO trigger. Now, you can do it without that, but if you can incorporate some social proof that really reinforces one or many of these triggers, that could make it even better. So what I recommend you guys is create an ad that focuses on just one primary emotional trigger. And eventually I would test individual ads with each trigger and see which one did best. And then along the same lines, I would also create an ad that had all the triggers in them, or at least 2 or 3 in one. And if you don't have a large budget, you can just do one at a time. If you have enough budget, you could do it all at once. But that's a great way that I would implement this. So my friends, using emotional triggers could take your ads potentially to the next level. Make sure you guys are using this, leveraging it, testing it out. Episode 383 is in the books. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to get in touch, philgrahamdigital.com is the website, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I will talk to you on next week's episode. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.